everybody, welcome back. We are on to the fourth objective in chapter 1, which is now we are going to solve multi-step inequalities. So we want to recall what an inequality is. It's not really an equal sign anymore. We're going to have a greater than, a less than, a greater than or equal to, or a less than or equal to sign. And we're going to deal with these four symbols as we solve our problems. The process of solving will be similar, but because we're dealing with these symbols, we're going to have to make a couple alterations. So as we move on in our packet, we can see in these questions, the first part is that we are given an inequality. The second portion is, wait a minute, you're going to also have to graph your answer. So two different things we're going to have to deal with in these. First of all, the solving is not a big deal. We're going to take this equation, this inequality, and solve it the exact same way we've been solving equations in the previous three sections. I'm going to combine like terms. And then just make sure, I don't really need to do this, but go ahead and make sure my variable is isolated. Okay, now, just like before, in my answer, I absolutely need the variable to be first here. Just like last time we had x equals a number, now I need the variable first, and then we'll move on. The reason I need the variable first is because I'm going to come back up here and graph this. So, the first thing I'm dealing with is that I am right here at 1. So I'm going to put a point at 1. I need that point to be open like this, so not filled in, because this sign right here tells me it's an open circle. We'll get to one where I would actually fill that point in like this, but that's not what we're going to do here. Now, this sign also tells me which way to shade. I shade the exact same way, but that inequality is pointed. So it's pointed this way. So I shade the exact same way as the inequality is pointed. Watch how that works again. I can actually take this inequality right here and put it on my graph right there. And then simply shade in between. And that's what I'm looking for as the solution. I'm looking for this graph as my answer to this problem. As I look through these, let's take a look, because all of our equations and the skills we just learned will apply here. In 43, I've got a distributive property. So I'm going to take that 6 and distribute it. 6 times 1 is 6, minus 7 times 6 is 42, greater than or equal to 174. All of our skills for solving remain the same. So, as I look here, the left-hand side, let's go ahead and subtract 6. Like so. Now, I'm going to divide by this front number. And here's a little rule that we're going to have to follow. This side will cancel, and I'll look for the v. And on the other side, I'm going to get -4. But because I divided by a negative number, this sign flips. Only when I divide by a negative. So up at the top, when I divided by +1, I didn't flip the sign, but in this case, I do. That's important because this tells us which way to graph. So I'm going to start at -4, and it's going to be a closed circle because it's an or equals to line. So at -4, I put a closed-in circle, and then this is still pointed the way I want to go. So I'm going to point that way, like so. So we can see a couple things in this. First, the inequality tells us which way to point it, only if we have the variable on the left-hand side. Second, the open versus closed circle. And we do want to remember that. And I would probably make a note of it somewhere. I'm going to put mine right here. That these inequalities represent closed circles, whereas these inequalities are open circles. And you can kind of make yourself a little reminder that that's how that's going to be correct. All right, let's take a look at a couple other pages. Most of this will be the same thing. I want to caution you on 4 and 5. Right here, the temptation is to do that addition first. The temptation is to tell me that 6 plus 5 is 11. Like so. Unfortunately, that does not follow order of operations. What we need to do is distribute that 5 first. Then we'll deal with the 6. So, there it is distributed because multiplying comes before addition. And now I can add those like terms and get 46. The rest of this will hang out for the run. From here, same rules of an equation. And again, I have to flip that sign because I divided by -10 there. And people do like me to put that divide by -10 each time, so I'll make sure I keep doing that. Right there's my solution. So I come back up. Again, the only thing you're going to be graded on is the graph. This is an open circle right there, and there's my inequality sign. Again, look at how this matches that. That's telling you exactly where to go. And then all you need to do is shade wherever that's pointed. As I finish up the packet, we can see that all of these are looking very similar. So, in conclusion, we know our rules for solving an equation. We know our rules for solving an inequality. An equation, I should get x equals a number, and an inequality, I get x is greater than a number. Finally, we do want to make a note of some special cases. And my special cases would be equations that look like this. The first special case would look like this. So you'd have some equation that's simplified, and we are now right here where I'm ready to draw my line and get to work. And what happens, I can add this 5x, or I'm sorry, let's go back here a little bit. I can add this 3x, and then I can subtract this 4, and I get multiple things that cancel out. And I'm left here with 5x equals nothing over here, so 0. I put this as a special case because when I divide by 5, this starts to scare people, but 0 divided by 5 is simply 0. We talked about this early on. My next special case would be be a similar problem. Only now, when I subtract my 2x, subtract my 4, the x values cancel out. That's an issue because I no longer have x equals. This is what's known as no solution. And no solution means there is no value of x that I can plug into the problem and get a right answer. We can go back, and right here, if this were the problem, we'll change it the exact same way. There's me subtracting 2x, subtracting the 4. And in this case, look what happens here. Everything goes away. The x values cancel out, just like in my last example. But in this case, everything cancels out. And it turns out that's a true statement. 0 does equal 0. And this is what's known as infinite solutions. So we want to be able to label that in the process of solving. Outside of that, be careful on anything else that we're going to look at as far as, zeros, negative numbers. But the only things we're going to have to graph are going to be inequalities. When we get to our quiz, we'll take one last video here in a second, do one last quick review. Then we'll go ahead and start our quiz. So, finish this packet. Have me check your answers, and then we'll start with our quiz. All right.